Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be forging a center bit. This is the bit that was developed after the spoon bit but before the modern auger that we have today. And as you can see, it's basically just a drill bit stripped down to its bare essentials. It doesn't have a lead screw and it only has one cutting edge and one spur. As it turns out, it really isn't that effective in a brace, but it works really well in a power drill, so we see this design reincarnated as the spade bit that we have today. To forge the bit, I'm going to be using a piece of 3/8 round spring steel. In the first couple of heats, I'm going to be upsetting the end of the bar slightly. I need a little bit more material here at the end of the bit, but nowhere else on the drill bit. So I've decided to upset the end rather than start with a larger stock and draw down the shaft of the bit. I'm hitting the end of the bar with a light hammer, but I'm also hitting the end at a slight angle so that the bar tends to bend towards the anvil. Of course, the anvil's there so it can't bend too much, so that helps to keep the distortion under control. So I'm also rotating the bar with every hit, so that tends to even out the hammering along the end. So you can really get a lot of work done in one heat doing it this way. Now that I have the mass that I need for the blade of the spade bit, I'm going to be creating the transition between the main shaft of the drill and the blade itself. These spade bits always taper down to a very narrow cross section right before the transition to the blade, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm doing it now before I forge out the blade because it's just so much easier to get the hammer in there without the blade being at its full width. And in this heat I'm basically just doing some final shaping, just getting everything ready for the crosspeen. And here I have the drill bit cut from the bar, and I'm getting ready to forge the taper that's going to fit into the brace. I omitted to show this when I did the auger bit, and I was reminded of that. So basically this is what I did to finish the end of the auger bit. Wasn't anything special, just a taper that fits into my brace. Now I'm getting ready to shape the cutting edges of the bit, and I'm just using a chalk mark to give me a rough idea of where the center line is. The first area that I'm cutting out is going to define the location of the spur. I found that this design needs a fairly long center point before you start getting into any of the cutting edges. This type of center point doesn't anchor the drill bit as well as a lead screw does, and the single cutter really has a lot of pulling force. So if you don't have the lead point long enough, then it won't stay anchored in the cut. It'll start to wander and start tearing up the sides of the hole. On the opposite side, I'm going to be grinding out the notch that's going to be for the cutter. It's essentially at the same level as the spur, but it can be a little bit lower. It really doesn't make that much difference. This cutting edge, once I filed it to shape, is going to get folded down, so even though it's starting at the same level, by the time it's done forging, it's going to be quite a bit lower, so the spur is going to engage before the actual cutting edge. And the spur, of course, is what severs the grain, so it needs to cut first to create a clean hole. Now, I've been filing on this drill bit for a couple of minutes and I haven't been able to hold it securely because there aren't any parallel flat surfaces on this bit. So I'm going to resort to an old machinist trick, which is to use a piece of copper wire between the work and the jaws of the vise. The copper wire is stiff enough to allow me to securely crank down the handle of the vise and hold the work firmly, yet it's soft enough to take up any of the irregularities in the work. It's a little awkward to set up, but it really does work great. So after a few minutes of filing, this is what the drill bit looks like. The front edge of the bevel that I've filed onto the center point is basically falling on the center line, and that also leads down to the start of the cutting edge, which is also on that center line. I haven't touched the spur side of the center bit because that's too easily damaged. The next thing that I have to do is forge the cutting edge into its final shape. So once that's done, then I'll continue shaping the rest of the bit. So here I'm getting ready to shape the auger part of the bit. The bevel side is facing up, so as I hammer the cutting edge around the corner, the cutting edge is going to be facing downwards. And you can see here why I didn't want to finish the center point or the spur before doing this operation. Any missed hammer blow here would really create a big mess. But leaving everything as a block leaves it pretty sturdy. Here I'm a little bit further along and you can see how I've roughed out the shape of the bit. Now I'm ready to do the final fitting. Up to this point all the measuring has been done by eye and I really have no idea whether the left half of the bit is scribing the same arc as the right half of the bit. So what I'm doing here is I'm just drilling down far enough until the spur scribes an arc. And I'm going to be using that as my reference point to shape the rest of the bit. So basically anything on the bit that falls outside of that arc is going to be removed. And after a few trips back and forth to the grinder, hopefully we have a drill bit that'll cut a clean hole. And here's the completed bit after I've sharpened it. I've heat treated this bit exactly the same way that I did with the auger bit that I did in the first video in this series. I find that this bit cuts well, but the chips don't get cleared away as efficiently as a modern auger bit. So if you're drilling a deep hole, you do need to pull the bit out from time to time to clear out any chips that are stuck in the hole. Next time I'll be going back a little further in time and complete the series by forging a spoon bit. Hi, I'm Dennis and thanks for watching. If you're interested in supporting this channel, the simplest way of course is to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have questions and you want to contact me directly, you can do so by emailing me at either one of the addresses that I have listed here. It may take me a couple of days, but I will get back to you.